we're going to talk about how to balance multiple books at once. I have to bounce around a lot of projects day to day. I work on somewhere between like 3 to 6 books at a time. Half of those are usually client books, usually ghostwritten, and the other half are personal projects, little stories just for me, things that I've been working on over the years. And this causes a lot of like mayhem in my creative flow because a lot of them are different genres or different mediums. Some are meant to for like TV shows or movies and they have to be properly prepared for those adaptations. And then other ones are meant for strictly text only. And that kind of flexibility actually puts a wrench in my creative process. It's not as linear as if you were to write one book start to finish. I don't like writing one book start to finish, and there's a reason for that. One, ADHD. I like weaponizing my ADHD against it. So what I will do is using those natural inclinations to bounce from one project to another. Being if I can select the things that I am distracted by, then I am more likely to be productive throughout the day instead of going down rabbit holes just for fun. If I pointedly make a an effort to keep those rabbit holes within my realm of research as long as it's fun for me, then my ADHD works for me and I'm able to accomplish a lot more that way. I do have to implement strategies for my ADHD so that I don't go off the rails, so that I can stay within those boundaries and confines and work with the rules a little bit. Being able to really condense my energy all into one thing and then point it somewhere. That helps me keep on track and make progress on all of the things that I'm working on, no matter how different they are, because I'm able to really show up for myself like that. I don't have to wait around to be in the mood to write something. I don't have to cool down from one project. I can launch straight into another one or even line them all up in a row. And today I wanted to talk about some of the strategies that I use to really make a point of balancing multiple projects at the same time, even if they are different genres, even if they take a different kind of effort, different kind of writing styles, and being able to flow between them the best way I can. So first off, the first thing that I do, I am a huge believer that you have a creative time period of your day where you are the most creative that you are going to be in that 24 hours. And it usually happens for me around like 3 hours after waking up, and it only lasts for about 6 hours. So like for me, the best time to write in a day is from around 9, 10 in the morning till around like 4, 6 at night. And I usually get a solid 6 hours no matter what. Some days it's longer, and I'm very thankful for that. Sometimes I'll get like 9 hours straight of creativity, but I usually don't dip below 4 or 5 hours on a bad day either. That allows me to properly schedule which projects will need to exist in the time where I have the most energy to tackle them. So if I'm experiencing writer's block, if I have a plot twist or a plot point that is giving me the runaround and I don't know how to do that, then I will block that for the first hour or two of my day. And I'll get up to speed on genre tropes and really get in that like a good headspace to tackle that certain project. Let's say it's a sci-fi cyberpunk type world and the plot line is a romance. So from there, I would have to get into more of like a sci-fi analytical lens and really adapt my focus to come from a science perspective. But then I would also need to draw on emotions for prose description, as a plot point, emotions, things like that. So when I'm focusing on that, getting up to speed, I might be reading something that puts me in a romance headspace while listening to certain music that's a little bit more like EDM or something like that. And that helps me with properly preparing my brain to tackle the first thing of the day. Again, Sometimes I will line up things all in a row, but I usually listen to what my body is telling me. If I wake up and I am not in a science mood, I had a dream about a fantasy book or something like that, I'm not writing sci-fi. I can't. It's too much of a switch and it takes up too much creative energy for me to do that. So I'm going to write fantasy. This helps me with really adapting my personal creative energy well to the project that I need to tackle for the day, and being able to have any like topic to fit to my personal energy allows me to constantly be making progress instead of wasting energy or waiting to be in the perfect headspace to write something, because I can't always be in one mode. I don't only write one thing. I like writing many different things, and by doing many things all at the same time, there is always a time and place for something. If I wake up and I am in the mood to do a fantasy short story, I'm writing a fantasy short story, and that sci-fi is going to have to wait till later in the day. Now, this actually brings me to my next point, where you can use some of the strategies or solutions for some of your other projects in the project that's giving you the most problems. So by going down that rabbit hole for your sci-fi romance, you might actually figure out some sort of character backstory that you've been struggling to figure out in a fantasy time travel thing. And through that, you're able to, again, keep moving, always be producing and being productive, but also kind of having those problems on standby for the solutions that you will inevitably find, instead of having to sweat through them. As Hemingway would say, just sit and bleed. That way, when you get to that thing, if you bounce from, like, if you figure it out and you're like, oh my god, the backstory, and you just click over tabs, if you just switch projects and you just write down that backstory, and you're like, oh no, I spent 45 minutes writing this backstory, I need to get down to my, no, that's progress. You did something today. That's a lot of words that you got down, and you shouldn't be ashamed of that. Being able to bounce around a lot like that, even if they're not for the same project, doesn't mean that they're any less. In fact, I've found that since adapting multiple books into my daily regime, I get more words on paper. I do double in a day than what I usually do if I just had one project at a time, because I don't have to wait for a writer's block to lift. I don't have to sit through it. If I get to a hurdle that I just simply don't have enough energy, I can take a break by doing something else. I can let my creativity flow on a different project. Similarly, if I'm writing one book and maybe it's a song or a movie that I saw recently that catches me, that takes up too much brain energy, brain space, by using it, I'll get it out of my system. I won't wait for it to go away, and I won't ignore it. I won't stay focused on one thing. It's almost cathartic. It's like getting a blister or something, and then you're not supposed to pop it to heal it, but for me, that might just be like dumping every thought that I have about a certain topic or a certain story or a certain character into just like a Google Doc. And I use Notion. I usually will open up a new page and I'll just dump it. That could be plug and played for your next project. That could be turned into its own thing entirely. Sometimes I'll use those same things in like settings, characters, plot lines, world building that I do for clients. Sometimes they are missing something that I've already created, and it's a match made in heaven. It's fate. And I really, truly believe that by getting it all out on paper, you're not wasting any time with not doing your main project. You are still giving the catharsis of being creative that gives you the break from your regular issues, from your regular problems. But you also get this sense of accomplishment. It's like a satisfaction of scratching that itch. Getting it off of your plate, breathing that air. It's not on your chest anymore. And you don't have to touch it. You don't have to tackle that right away. You don't have to turn it into its own fully fledged thing. You just need to get it out of your system. Just write it down, write down everything, even if it means a rabbit hole. I once spent a solid 3 days, and the only thing I did was just create this like web series, and then I just saved it, and I was like, okay, cool. And then I went back to my main projects. It cleared up. It allowed me to get rid of old creative energy to make space for new ones. And like I said, you're able to figure out problems, or figure out the solutions for problems for your main projects by tackling other ones. There's a lot of carryover. It's all the same storytelling technique, strategies. Sometimes I will wait for like a mood to cross me. So I talked about this a little bit with getting like waking up in a certain way and immediately tackling a certain project that I'm in the mood for. In the same way, if there's a solid thunderstorm outside, and you just wait till it's late at night and you put on like the right kind of music, you are having the best boss battle of your life. You are writing the most deeply emotional, intense scenes you ever will. Versus if it's like sunny and bright outside, if it's all breezy and everything's nice, and your friends are texting you and stuff, and you're like just got back from ice cream, you're not writing a good villain dialogue. I'm sorry, you're not. And your atmosphere, your headspace needs to mimic the prose and the scenes that you're tackling. That's why I also recommend writing your scenes out of order. Do whatever you feel is going to have the most potency, because you'll be able to communicate better. You'll be able to draw from a very certain, very specific place in order to communicate those scenes properly, the way that they deserve to be told. And through doing that, if I wake up and I'm just, sometimes I wake up, I'm just fucking pissed. I'm just fucking mad. And so I'll grab coffee, I'm playing heavy metal, and I'm doing, like, again, I'm writing a boss battle. We're doing our fight scenes today. We're doing some heavy shit. I'm just, like, the dialogue is swearing and anger, and that's all we're doing. And I'm just getting, like, I'm throwing shit around in the world building. Like, I'm like, fuck you, it is what it is. Again, great energy allows me to tackle a lot of shit, and I don't feel like, oh no, like the next scene that I have to write is this very dainty, like, return to the mom scene, and I'm not in the, like, I don't have the energy for it today. Like, I'm I feel like my personal problems are getting in the way. I use them. I weaponize everything that I feel on a day-to-day basis to keep me moving, to keep my writing flowing. And to me, that feels very, very important. Another thing that I do is looking for a sort of structure in my writing pattern. So if I feel like I'm just going to go as hard as possible, as fast as possible, being able to pace myself matters a lot for longevity. So I will set up like a Pomodoro, and I'll do like a 40 minute on writing, and then a 20-minute break, and you get up, go do dishes, something like that, kind of clear the air a little bit, come back, do it again. Just every minute on the minute type of work. That, to me, works especially well when I really do not want to write. If I have a lot of things to do and I just feel like I'm being pulled to every which direction on a variety of different things, administration and emails and client calls and things like that, that allows me to break up my day so that I can tackle everything in a linear order. Because if I bounce around too much, then I have too many things, and I will be spread too thin and nothing's getting done. So I use that technique pretty often. What I used to do way back when I first started writing, I would wait until my lunch break in the middle of the day. You get like a 30-minute in Canada, and I would find some sort of like a secluded place. I would go outside or something like that, set the 30-minute timer. I would do like a 15-minute, because I actually do want to break. I would do like a 15-minute writing sprint, and you can do like just like text to or speech to text on your phone, and just be yelling like transcript, just talking into the microphone and hoping that something pops up out of it. You can be writing dialogue, writing a scene, and as much as possible, as fast as possible. And when the timer is up, stop. Do not do any more. You're done, and that's it. And it accumulates over time. It feels slow at first. It feels like you got nothing down, but being like forcing yourself to stop when you know you had more is especially important, because you know where to start up the next day. And being able to look forward to that on your lunch break makes the workday go faster. And eventually you end up with something that you have like a real deal like my manuscript. It might not be full and completed, and it definitely isn't edited, but it's something that you get to be like, oh my God, I'm writing a book. Like, this is for something. I'm seeing this come to life as I'm talking about it. And I think that putting those time constraints on your writing, like specifically the act of writing, helps for productivity. You feel more, the challenge almost makes you focus more because you can't afford to spend a second being distracted. And again, for those of us like me with ADHD, awesome, especially when I write all day long. If working within a couple of minutes or a couple of hours is not for you, you can even do longer sprints. And that seems a little bit weird to call them sprints, but think of like Camp NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. Every November, 30 days on the clock, write a book start to finish, 50,000 words. And that kind of pacing is very doable for most people in most scenarios. A month to write a book, very short time frame, which is why a lot of people will take October to research, get their characters down, make sure their plot is pretty good, and do like the bulk of the beginner work so that when November comes around, they're just writing and that's it. And I think that that sort of a constraint works very, very well if you have a lot of projects that you want to do, but you can't work on 3 different books a day every day. Being able to be like, this is what I'm focusing on this month is very productive. It's very potent. I've even talked about it on my own podcast, The Fiction Fix. You can find it on all platforms when I talked about fiction versus nonfiction work and being in the headspace to tackle a certain project. I think that through setting that kind of like a deadline where it's almost like a soft challenge rather than a hard, this needs to be done kind of thing, allows you to collapse your time in a way that feels much more manageable. You're able to think more in terms of how many words am I going to get today? How many do I need? What do I need to focus on the most? What do I not need to focus on? Things that can come after or go before, and forces structure into your writing. It forces you to really think about, when are you sitting down to put pen to paper? When are you writing this thing? And that is very, very important. I will usually encompass some method of that. I usually do in increments of years because, again, I'm writing usually 3 to 4 books a day every day. Not full-length books in a day, or else we wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd be retired on an island by now. But being able to collapse that time down and think about, how long is this story going to take me? How much work do I need to do? In what order am I doing this on? Because whereas I might have to do world building for one book, as the first thing that I do, I might need to be focusing on characters instead for another. And those types of things are very important to think about. It forces me to actually do the thing. It forces me to put it into perspective of, when in this time frame is this going to get done? How much of a priority is it? How much work is there to do versus the actual writing of the thing? Will it be longer or shorter? How much of this will come naturally as I'm writing the book? Some books are known before you start writing them. And it's important to think about all of that stuff. Another thing that you could do in that same vein, rotate it. Just rotate your idea of books. Whether that might be, if you lean more into one genre, being able to focus on a story for a long period of time, maybe like a week or so, and then cut off like Saturday, even if you have more in the tank, and then do a different story, or some sort of like leaving it and coming back really, really helps. Any way that you can rotate your stories around that feels structured and methodical, because your brain will learn the schedule and the pattern, and it will prepare solutions for whatever you're working on, so that when it feels like you are going to be switching projects soon, your brain's like, this is what we've been working on while you've been sleeping, while you've been consuming media, this is how we've been applying it. And it's really spectacular. You can really use your brain to your advantage when you're writing, and I really recommend it. I really think that if you were to use some sort of time constraint, some sort of like gamification of the process, like rotating or time blocking or whatever, just some sort of having fun with switching the projects itself, and then also using your writer's block to your advantage to keep producing and keep doing something, no matter what project is for, you in the long run will get a lot more words day to day and per project than you might have if you just focused on one.